it's your first time, thank you for joining this family. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you for coming back. For today's tutorial, as you can already tell from the thumbnail or the title, we are going to be making this pants right here, which you've probably seen the video of it. Also, before we get into it, let me explain quickly the details of this pants. So I looked up the features of a jogger and the features of a sweatpants. Apparently they are very different, and I tried to see if I could title this a sweatpants tutorial, but because of my choice of fabric, it didn't fall into any of that category. But this is the picture inspiration, or the picture we are recreating. For the fabric choice, I used this velvet fabric with stripes, but the person I bought it from insisted that it's a corduroy fabric, and I know corduroy very well, and I know corduroy is very thick. He insisted that this is a lightweight corduroy. For the yards, I use 1.5 yards, which would vary from sizes. If you're on the bigger side, you should consider using 2 yards. Without any further ado, let's get into the tutorial proper. Other materials you will need will be an elastic band. I got the one that is 1 inch wide. I also got a matching shoelace, which I will use along the waistline, and it's totally optional. Now I'll go ahead and fold my fabric into 2, and I'll just fold up the whole fabric into 2. Right at that point, I marked inwards 3 inches. If you're on the big size, I would advise you use 4 inches to 5 inches thereabouts. On the top part of the fabric, I marked 1/2 inch, which is going to be the sewing allowance of this trouser. I will place 1 inch of my tape outside of that 1/2 inch we have there, and I will mark 10 inches, which is going to be my hip line. The 1 inch we placed outside the fabric is going to be for the waistband of this trouser. I'll still place the tape like that, and I'll mark my crotch length. My crotch line is usually 11 inches, but as we know, this trouser is supposed to be very free around the crotch, so I used 12 inches instead of 11 inches. Right at the starting point, I will mark my round hip measurement divided by 4. I'll still bring that hip measurement divided by 4 to the hip line, but this time around I'll add extra 1/2 inch for ease allowance. I'll also bring that measurement down to the crotch line. I'll connect it to meet the waistline as seen. And now to get the crotch depth, we are going to divide our exact hip measurement by 4. Whatever it gives to us, we are going to still redivide it by 4, which gives me 2.25. So I'm going to extend the crotch with that measurement there. Now I'll go ahead and connect from that crotch depth extension to meet the hip line with a curve. I'll place my tape, making sure that the 1 inch is outside of that allowance at the top, and I'll mark the full length of this trouser, of which I use 46 inches, and you guys saw the length it gave me. Now the longest or the widest measurement we have here is the crotch line, so we are going to use that to get the midpoint of this trouser. So I've marked the midpoint of that crotch line, and I'll connect a straight line from that point to meet the full length. The next measurement to take is your thighs or your lap measurement. Place your tape around one of your thighs and divide it by 2. Mine gives me 11 inches. Now I'm going to find the midpoint of 11 inches, which is 5.5. First of all, I'm going to mark downwards 5 inches. Let's just say that is the point where we are going to start placing our lap or thighs measurement from. So I'll place that midpoint of 11 inches on the midpoint over there, and I'm going to mark right as seen. So once I mark, I'm going to add 1/4 inch for ease. I don't want to bring the exact measurements down, but now that I've gotten the thighs measurements with the ease allowance that I want, I'll just go ahead and connect it to meet the full length. But while I'm connecting it to meet the full length, I slanted my hands inwards a little bit. Now I added 1/2 inch for my sewing allowance all around the trouser. Right at that center front there, I marked 1 inch downwards, and I'll connect it to meet the waistline at the other side there in a slanted form. After cutting the front piece, I made a very big mistake by flipping this the opposite direction before cutting out the back piece. If you look at the video on the screen, you will see how the colors were contrasting, and that was just because I placed this the opposite direction. You will see that it is not even the back face, it was just contrasting because it was placed the opposite way. I know very well that velvet does this contrasting thing, but I don't know how it skipped my mind, and I just went ahead to flip this over. So just make sure not to do that mistake if you don't want to have the same issue here. So now I'm going to place this, and I'll make sure to have some allowance on the part where we have that crotch curve there. Just leave some allowance there. Remember that your front piece already has all the sewing allowance we need. And since this is a very free trouser, we are not going to be recontouring the back crotch. We are just only going to re-extend it by that same measurement we used for the front piece, which was 2.25. We are only going to re-extend it by that two measurements we used there. Make sure to find your own measurements. So once we've gotten that, we are going to mark 1 inch upwards at that waistline. Remember, we slanted the front piece down with 1 inch, so we are going to mark that up there. We are going to replace it for the back piece, and now we'll blend that crotch depth into the full length of the trouser, and you can go ahead and cut this out. I'll place both pieces of the pants, that's the front pieces and the back pieces, as seen, and I'm just going to start sewing along that crotch curve that we have there. So you just sew up as indicated and stop there. After sewing it up, this is what they look like. I'm going to place the front piece on the back piece as seen, and I'm just going to sew up only the side seams. So when you are sewing the side seams, make sure to sew up the sewing allowance that you added. If you added more than half an inch, make sure to sew it up. Just in case I didn't mention, the sewing part is like the easiest part. Now we are going to sew up the inner legs together, and we are going to join those crotch points together with a pin, and then we'll just sew up the allowance that was added to that part. After sewing it up, I went further to trim off the excess fabric that I had at the base. So in order to cut out the waistband, I took the round waist measurement of the trouser itself, which gave me 43 inches, and that's because we did not use our waist measurement. It was our hip measurements we used on the waistline. So for the waistband, you are going to cut it on fold in 1.5 inch, so that the 1 inch is going to be for the waistband, and then half inch is going to be used to join the waistband to the trouser itself. So you're also going to cut your waistband in 2 separate pieces so that they can have joining by the side. So I also sewed up the sides of the waistband as seen, and now I'm going to create some holes so that I can put my my shoelace around it. So I folded the waistband into 2, right? This is exactly how your waistband should be sewn to your clothes. So at that point where I have the sewing line, one of the sewing lines, what I'm going to do is to just chalk out where I want the eyelet to be. So just pick it up as seen and fold it into 2, and then use your chalk to mark where you want your eyelet holes to be fixed. So it's very important for your eyelet to be around one of these sewing lines there. You will understand as we go further. So I'll just create a hole using this soldering iron that is already connected and very hot. If you don't have an eyelet machine, like I said, this method is very optional. It's something that can be skipped, but if you really want to get this, just take this to those that fix eyelets at the market if you don't have an eyelet machine. So just for a closer view, I've already fixed one of them. I'm going to show you guys closely how I fixed the second one. So you're going to place your pin on the eyelet machine, and if that opening is not enough, you can just use your scissors to, recreate that hole better, to just make it bigger. So once you've put it there, you just place the pin ring on it, and then you just go ahead and press your eyelet machine down, and it will clip it very firm. This way you don't have to worry about weaving on. This is just perfect. Just take this to people that do eyelets for you so they can have it done for you. So I placed my elastic on my waist and I cut it to how firm I want it to be around my waist. So now that I've cut it, we'll just go ahead to our sewing machine and join it up as seen. If you have an industrial machine, you can just go ahead and use the zigzag stitch, but I do not, so I was sewing in no order and I sewed multiple times so that the elastic is very firm. Next, I'm going to secure the elastic in the waistband. I'm just going to fix it in that fold, just as seen, and then I will start sewing the 1/2 inch sewing allowance. This way, the elastic band will be secured in the waistband, just as seen. So as you keep on sewing, you keep on adjusting. Make sure that you are not sewing on the elastic. Make sure you are sewing on only the sewing allowance. Just make sure the elastic is inside the band. Now that the waistband is ready, I'm going to pin it to the waistline of the trouser, and I'll make sure that the part that has the eyelet is placed at the center front. This is very, very important. Now you're going to go ahead and just pin this all around and take it to your sewing machine for sewing. So after joining the waistband to the trouser itself, I will go ahead and start fixing my shoelace around that waistline. Now this is a closer view of what it looks like. It's looking really nice and clean, but it doesn't stop here. We have to secure this elastic in that waistband, else it will keep on moving around. Also, for the rough edges inside, I'll be taking it to the weavers for weaving. So now we are going to first of all hem the base. In order to hem the base, I tried this trick that I saw online. You're going to fold twice at that base there, and you're going to sew on that same sewing line of where you have the allowance, just as seen. You also repeat the same thing to the other side as well, and make sure to sew it properly. After which, this is what they both look like, and then now you are going to flip this over to the right face by just pulling it as seen. And then now you go ahead and just sew along the base as seen. You do this for both the legs. So the last thing I'm going to do is to secure the elastic like I mentioned, and you guys make sure to remove your shoelace before doing this. While I was sewing this and with the shoelace inside, I was struggling. I literally had to just keep on adjusting the shoelace inside so that I don't get to sew on it. But the best thing to do is to just remove the shoelace and sew around it. You're also going to, secure the elastic. You're going to hold it in like batches, and you're going to pull very well and make sure to sew right on the elastic. Like I said, I was pushing the shoelace so I don't get to sew on it. So this is basically the last step for this trouser. I took it for weaving the next day. And yes, in case you learned something new, make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to share, because that will help you to recommend this channel to other people as well. Also, do well to check us on our other social media platforms. On TikTok, we are bearing the same name, So with Jessica. On Instagram, same name, So with Jessica. On Facebook, same name, So with Jessica. Make sure to hit the subscribe button if you've not subscribed yet. And of course, you can also always drop your request tutorials. If your request tutorial has not been, done or granted yet, just know that there are some things we look out for, because apparently these clothes are just not just for the tutorial's sake. Someone has to wear them eventually. If they are so exposing, it might take time before I look into that tutorial, because I'll have to get someone that does not mind wearing an exposing clothes so I can make the dress for the person. But I think that's basically the only issue that will stop us from making some of your request tutorial. But definitely we do intend to bring out all the requested tutorials. Thank you guys for watching. See you in my next video. Bye.